Well, welcome everyone. As Elaine said a bit, Three Stages of Amazement takes place in 2009. The main characters, Lena Rush and Charlie Pepper, have been married 8 years. They, like all the couples in the book, are at a crossroads between the life they imagined and the life they've got. But tonight, we're going to go back to the beginning of their romance, when everything was possible. Charlie Pepper wasn't Lena's first love, but he counted on being her last. He counted on it from the beginning, when they met in the 90s in a different world. The party was in Soho. Josh Klein, Charlie's college roommate, having been named a partner at Goldman Sachs, was throwing himself a bash. Lena, a producer for an ABC News show, had come to research a piece on post-yuppies, whose avarice she intended to skewer in 4 parts. Charlie noticed her by the windows. She was wearing a black dress that announced her intention to go to the next level, while her face said, "But here I am. Why's that?" It was the disquiet in Lena's face that captured Charlie. Dark hair, pale skin, Audrey Hepburn neck. As she scanned the room, her eyebrows peaked as if asking a fundamental question. Charlie wondered what it was. He hoped he had the answer. There was a bit of the fairy about her, a bit of the witch. Obviously, it's an excellent time, Bill Hungerford told Charlie, by way of explaining his recent move into private equity. Bill played squash with Josh Klein, and he seemed to be under the mistaken impression that Charlie was also a mover in financial circles. My pop's putting up the initial nut, if you're wondering about that. Charlie wasn't even remotely listening. What color, he mused. Green? He was talking about Lena's eyes. Green? Oh, sure, baby. Green as Ben Franklin. Bill Hungerford laughed, but by then Charlie was halfway to the windows. Oh, no, Lena thought as the buffalo hunter approached. They weren't alike at all. She was impatient to his patience, intuitive to his 1 foot in front of the other empire-building logic. She was mercurial, proud, thin-boned, quick to slight, long to suffer, ardent. In other words, Lena Rush wouldn't likely fall for Charlie Pepper unless she were recovering from his opposite. As he came closer, Lena's gaze dropped to the whorls in the pickled oak floor. She'd been thinking lately that if she didn't do something amazing and soon, she'd become the thing most dreaded, ordinary. Hungry? Charlie asked, wanting everything, advertising nothing. He offered her a strawberry dipped in chocolate perched on a dainty white napkin. That's your name, Hungry? She took a large bite, showing him 2 versions of a smile, one with lips closed, the other with an endearing line of gum. As a matter of fact, Lena was hungry. That, and date-wise, it'd been a dismal couple of months. Love has built its house with less. Want burned in Charlie's lower brain, while upstairs he wondered if maybe she wasn't Greek or French. In fact, Helena Rush had been named for an actress of some merit in the Irish National Theatre. Great-great-aunt Helena first crossed the family blood by screwing the fair Norwegian actor who was playing Bassanio to her Portia. Following great-great-aunt Helena, subsequent generations, now in America, included a slave-owning Virginian, an Ohio Episcopalian, and a handful of Jews who forgot they were Jews once they reached California. This all took place on Lena's mother's side. On her father's side, there were the money-fixated, unyielding Germanic Rushes, who every few generations produced a dreamer unable to earn a buck. Lena's father. Nice, But too nice? She wondered, glad that Charlie wasn't pretty, not with that hawkish nose and small English teeth. Age and some sleep would be kind to the face of Charlie Pepper, adding gravitas here, softening there, bettering. Lena could see that map as far as it went. Her gaze shifted to Charlie's capable hands. A sigh of girlish hope escaped her. She'd been holding herself safe, tied up in knots. Every so often she'd undo a part, let it down, have a fling. In the beginning, they all wanted to marry her. That would go on for a time, until one or the other would put the fork in. Her friends were all career women pretending not to be looking for husbands while looking for them every night. But Lena never pretended. She'd done away with love. Where to? She asked, taking Charlie's arm. A low current ran through her as they moved across the wide planked floor. Look at this, she thought. I'm completely calm. She'd gone off with a stranger once before, but that had been different. That had been entirely different. She was nowhere near that trouble now. Stop grinning like an ass, Charlie warned himself, smiling anyway as he led Lena down several flights of stairs. At one point, he let her get a few steps ahead. Her hair was thick and her ears very small, and he had to keep his hand in his pocket so as not to touch, not to cover her bones, her cheeks, her nose with his mouth. He had a tremendous urge to crush her. Here, he said, once they were outside, nearing the corner. He tucked her close like a package that must be kept out of the rain. We're going here. Even after the wedding, they still believed that marriage was a flexible, romantic sort of agreement, which they would shape and polish over time. It was not. Marriage was a stone on which far tougher than the likes of Lena and Charlie had been shaped and polished unto vapor and salt. Theo arrived a few years later, and soon he was a sweet-faced kid who asked too many questions, but that just made him more like his mother and more loved. They took up housekeeping in a three-bedroom condo in the Back Bay of Boston. Charlie joined the surgical faculty at Mass General, leading a push in robotics. Lena was a senior producer for special projects at Boston's famed PBS station, WGBH. She'd produced a winning series on the evolution of the presidency and had won the plum assignment of making a documentary on the global AIDS crisis. Lena took Charlie and Theo on that first trip to Mombasa, Uganda, to a teaching hospital with a small HIV clinic. The surgical unit had just one full-time doctor and an overflowing population of sick and wounded. It lacked an X-ray machine, and the one wheezy generator only intermittently supported the lights and a ventilator. Charlie believed he could help. Soon they were spending their vacations in Mombasa. Charlie brought over some residents from Boston to help with the staff. He built systems. Lena, toting Theo, worked with a local woman to start a school. At night, they ate dinner at the Lord's Bar. Grilled goat, chapati, salsa, beer. That first year, they traveled to Mombasa twice. They were happy, as singularly happy as they would ever be. Then one night, back home, as Lena and Charlie made love, at the climactic moment, she heard the ripple in the river. Straddling Charlie, locking him with her thighs, she put a cool finger to his heart and asked, "What is it?" "What is what?" Charlie truly believed he'd only been shooting the breeze with his friend Swanson, that's all. Lena nodded encouragingly. She gave him plenty of time. She had looked inside him to the lamplight there, and seeing the lamp, Lena also spied the secret box he kept beside it, as everyone did, as she had one herself. His heart beat up through her finger. "You know," she said. He didn't quite, not in so many words. Having marched straight through med school into his internship and residency, and then on to the daily grind of a high-speed surgical career, Charlie Pepper hit his 40s wanting something more. Something more woke him in the night like a lover calling his name. but he hadn't really put it into words. Smiling knowingly, Lena climbed down from the bed and walked her high ass out of the room. She was never casual with her intuitions, and she never liked to waste time, and besides, the lamp and the box were hallowed things not to be messed with. What the hell just happened? Charlie sat up, pulling the covers discreetly to his waist. He felt stunned, enlivened, and yes, some afraid. Lena was in the kitchen now, banging cabinets, opening the fridge door, his small-boned girl with a bit of a heavy hand. Loving always made her starving. That he knew as well. She returned with a plate of chicken, grapes, bread, pickles, cheese, and a six-pack of Guinness. Climbing into bed, she daintily arranged the picnic around her. She tore off a hunk of bread, laid it across her palm, and stacked it with a slice of chicken and a log of cheese. Biting down, Lena groaned with pleasure. Then she fixed him with those grass-green eyes. Once Charlie started talking, it was hard to stop. His thoughts tumbled out, fully formed, like neat bricks set in rows. Of course, he drank a bit, too. We'll talk of this time, he said, as the revolution. Charlie had already convinced Mass General to invest in a $1 million robot called the Midas. He had made himself the go-to guy, training doctors up and down the East Coast. This much Lena knew. But the Midas proved to be an Edsel, overly technical, fussy. And through his work in Mombara, Charlie had imagined a more simplified robot that could be used in remote locations, a battlefield, say. A smaller robot that could be wheeled in on a cart and cost 1/10 of the price of the Midas. Any surgeon anywhere would want to use it. In a long life together, who says what the key moments are? When love knocks you on the head and shouts, "Hey, listen up, this is our chance." Lena understood desire. She understood it in her bones. She ate all the food and drank a beer, then put her plate aside. She'd been listening carefully, and when her mind wandered, she counted the crow's feet around Charlie's eyes, making certain they were the same number as yesterday, and then she listened a little more. They would have to move out west to join Swanson, who had deep roots in the medical device world. San Francisco would be a leap backwards to a place she'd run from years ago. She saw the sharp, unhappy faces of her mother and her sisters, and putting them aside, she hugged her ribs and focused on the pleasant cadences of Charlie's voice. Lena considered the sweet fragrance of San Francisco in March, when the hills of Marin and Oakland were greenest, and the sea air mixed with the pungent, flowering privet. She recalled those tawny afternoons of her childhood as the sun cast its golden veil over the city. But was she ready to go back? From here, her thoughts turned to shadows. She fretted over housing prices. She hated the thought of leaving the job she loved. She knew it would be hell to get Theo into one of those snotty private schools, but the public schools which she preferred were broken. So instead, Lena imagined calling her best friend Violet, whom she missed terribly, to say she was coming home. The picture brightened again. By the time Charlie finished, she had decided they'd keep the piano but sell the car. "You okay?" he asked, for there were tears in her eyes. Then again, she had a piece of arugula stuck in her tooth. With the tip of his finger, Charlie removed it. He kissed her deeply, holding her face in his capable doctor hands and pledging, in so many endearing, silly phrases, his undying love. Then he sat back to listen. He knew she would have lots of questions. At first, she said nothing. She got out of the bed and, throwing on his old sweater, sat in the one good chair across from him. Her eyes tick-tocked. Finally, she said, we could lose each other. It wasn't a question. She had hefted the largest boulder from the river and flung it on the floor between them. She expected him to examine it with her. We're different, she said. That's fine when it's just us together. But the distance, Charlie. She shook her head. Charlie didn't want to think about them being different. With you, Lean. That's what I'm saying. It's always going to be us. We're talking years, Charlie. You won't do this halfway. I wouldn't want you to. What, do you mean schedules? We can figure that out. Now, let's figure it out right now. And once again she pointed to the rock he could not see. Weekends, he ventured. I'll be home on the weekends and 3 out of 5 nights during the week. And Mambara? He thought for a long moment. Finally, he hung his head. I'll have to cut out Mambara. Cut it out? She cried. Didn't he understand Mambara was hers too? Charlie opened his mouth and shut it like a fish. Okay, I'll cut back. Whatever it takes, honestly, babe. His heart was racing. 3 years. Let's agree we'll give it 3 years. I'll build it. We'll sell it. I don't know. We can do this, Lean. We can be big. How do you know we can be big? My God, I just know. Feeling it too, she nodded. Her hand went to her heart. She'd been thinking lately it was time they had another child. Charlie Pepper. Come over here and say that. She smiled but stayed put. I said come over here. I heard you. Maybe now, Charlie thought, I should offer her something equally bounteous. Hey, he said, let's make a girl this time. When scared or surprised, her ears moved back like a horse's. What, Pep? Then I'd have 2 to raise on my own? But she was beaming, and Charlie knew he had hit on the very thing. They had no limits. Together they had no limits at all. They laughed as she crawled back on top. Come here. They were as ordinary as any 2 people wanting more. When Lena's boss heard that her radical Save the World and Nail the Bastards producer was pregnant with twins and moving to San Francisco, Kay Higgins let go a world-weary sigh. Why is it, she asked, in a boom economy, it's always the women heading back to the kitchen? Higgins was 55 and a spinster. What besides a lifetime of work did she know? She fixed Lena with a self-justifying smile that was the purview of politicians and maiden aunts. My door's always open, sweetheart. I'm just so disappointed I won't see your star walk through it. Again Kay sighed, a sigh that had everything to do with her old loneliness, but that part Lena missed. Instead, she heard a warning. I'll get there, she protested. It might take a little more time. It'll be harder. Kids feed off the primary vein. Fine by me. Oh, it'll be fine. It'll be wonderful. Just different. But Lena wasn't sure she wanted different, if different meant being less. What had she been doing all these years if not striving to become someone? She wanted to have her children and still be the mighty star. What's this, Kay? Didn't we agree that there should be a special place in hell for women who didn't help other women rise? Lena was already on her feet, heading for the door. You know, for women who don't let other women choose. Oh, honey, by all means choose. By all means rise, Kay agreed, but there was something new in her voice that sounded to Lena a lot like a door closing. Lena was halfway down the hall when she remembered where she was going, and feeling better, she shouted behind her, Life, Kay, life. Thank you.